Welcome to the show No Instructions, where we meet with founders and interview them about starting and growing their businesses. I'm your host, Chad Ingram, 3-time founder and CEO at Distro. Distro is a platform to help businesses build teams by breaking down borders around the world. Let's go ahead and get started with today's guest and see how they built their business. Okay, welcome to the podcast, No Instructions. Today we have with us Johnny Hanna. So Johnny Hanna is actually at Funnel today, but more known as the co-founder of Entrata, and as well as the co-founder or founder at Homey, right? So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, super cool. So we want to hear your story. We want to hear just everything that got you here to this point. We only have a little less than an hour to do it, but I think that there's a lot to be learned from your experience. So where does your story start with how, you became or had some calling to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I don't know where it started.
Yeah.
I know I bought baseball cards back in the day and tried to sell them for a little bit more money than what I bought them for, if I found a nice one in the deck.
Yeah.
I shoveled, I ditched out on school any snow day that there was and went and shoveled sidewalks. I just tried to make money here and there.
Why do you think that was? Like, do you think that you were just maybe interested in trying things, or did you really want money? Or, as a kid?
Yeah, I wanted to have money to pay for things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, I didn't come from a super wealthy family.
What did your parents do for a living?
My parents split up early on. Mm-hmm. So my mom was a secretary at this little ranch in Colorado, and then eventually joined Boeing. And she's been there now, I think, for 34 years. She's going to retire this year. So she just climbed her way up at Boeing, and I was impressed by her. She scrapped and went to University of Phoenix. Did that after work. So, it was kind of just my older sister and my mom, and she was just trying to pay the bills. So I just feel like I didn't think anything negative of it. I just thought, hey, I go make some money and gonna go work and make this happen. So I think that continued through college as well. What just popped into my head was I bought a huge box of those carameled apple suckers.
Yeah. The green ones.
Yeah, the green ones. And I sucked on those in these big classes at school, and anybody that wanted them, I think I charged like $0.25 and made a little bit of money. Like it was never much.
That's funny.
And I bought and sold textbooks. That was
Where'd you go to school?
BYU, Idaho.
Okay. What'd you study?
I initially studied criminal justice and wasn't sure what to do with that, and then just went into general business because I was kind of clueless as to where I was going to end up. But sold textbooks, made a little money, sold plasma.
Was your, right.
So
you were a college student.
I was a college student.
Let me sell my everything.
Not my soul. Kept that intact.
Yeah, that's good. So your mom, was she kind of a single mom for a long period of time, or did she get married later?
Yeah, I mean, ever since I remember, my parents were split up. And so, I mean, they officially divorced, I think, when I was 6, but
they were separated a long time.
They'd been separated for a little while. So just watching her struggle and was definitely a challenge. Mm-hmm. But I don't remember demanding anything from her. It was just like, I need to go to work and figure out how to pay for things. So maybe that's where it started. But I had a friend in high school that invited me to start a business with them right before I graduated BYU, Idaho. Mm-hmm. And it was Entrata. It was called Property Solutions back then. And this was 2003. Mm-hmm. So he invited me to help him. Where
were you in? Were you in college at the time?
I was in college. I was in Rexburg, Idaho.
Okay. Thinking about studying business.
Yeah. And I was going to be graduating and didn't really have any prospects lined up. Still didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I had a few friends that had internships and, or a lot of people were doing the summer sales thing. And, and I had just worked for my dad's construction company in the summers. And
where was your dad at?
He was in Billings, Montana.
Okay.
So I knew from those summers of construction that I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And wanted to try something new. But so my high school friend invited me to help him enter the BYU business plan competition. He was here in Provo. And so we entered that. That was my senior project, my senior year. And we ended up winning that competition at BYU. They gave us $50,000.
And the name of it was?
Property Solutions.
Yeah,
we rebranded 12 years later to Entrata, and that's what everybody knows.
I remember the billboards for Property Solutions, and I was young. Yeah. I was young. I was like maybe 21 or something, and it's funny. I remember that as like an aspiring company, like you wanted to go work for that company because it was like a notable brand at the time.
Yeah, one of my favorite billboards that we had, it was one of our first billboards, was a guy with a mullet. And he was a cool looking guy. I mean, it's hard to say a cool looking guy with a mullet, but
it's cool now. Yeah. Go to high school and you'll see.
and even in college, I was a little bit of a mullet hunter myself, but yeah, it said business in the front, party in the back, careers, at Entrata,
I think I remember that.
PropertySolutions.com/careers is what it was. And so we had a culture of having a lot of fun, business in the front, but we made sure to have a lot of fun. So
let's go back to this. You won this competition.
Yeah.
This was in 2003?
2003.
Okay. Yep. So you get $50,000 and you have a friend who said, hey, maybe come do this with me. What's his name?
Dave Bateman.
Dave Bateman. Okay. So you guys have this idea together. As part of the competition, was it really just putting together a business plan and that's what won? Or did you have to go sell something or build any product or anything yet at the time? Do you remember?
Yeah, he had actually got going with a couple of our other partners, Ben Zimmer, Mike Trianfo. They were already started. We had a few other programmers.
Right.
We had a little bit of a team even before I really joined and before we even formed an official company. So I think that was helpful in the business plan competition. So yeah, I graduated in April, and he had already been working on the concept for a couple months, and we won that business plan in April. And then we all graduated and decided to go full time.
Perfect.
And we ended up winning a bunch of other business plan competitions and just used that money to seed the business. And that's really what got us going.
That was it.
That was it.
Wow.
A few professors put in some money.
Yeah.
Some BYU professors invested.
How much do you think you raised, that early on?
I think probably about $100,000. Yeah.
Can you imagine if you could start a business today with just $100,000? It'd be a little harder, maybe.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit more difficult. I mean, depending on what you want to do.
True.
I mean, our goal was, just to bootstrap, and essentially that's what we did.
Yeah, but what was the VC landscape like back then?
I don't even
Especially
know.
In Utah.
I don't even know what VC meant back then. So I don't think there was much.
Yeah, I mean, but in that sense, it was like, all right, we're gonna go build a really good business either way, So okay, so Bateman and company and team, approaches you join up, and you guys are, you've got $100,000 or less in the bank, and you're like, all right, yeah, let's go do this. Like, are you guys getting paid at this point, or is it, maybe a little bit and just trying to figure it out as a college student?
I mean, luckily I was single when I graduated, and I tried really hard not to be single when I graduated. I had proposed a few times and that didn't work out.
How much later did you get married?
I was about 28. So maybe 5 years into the company.
Okay. Yeah.
4 years into the company.
Let's come back to that. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I took about $600 a month as a paycheck.
Yeah. Not much.
And I had an apartment that I rented out there were 6 of us.
Yeah.
So we had 6 bedrooms in a house, and I rented out my bedroom and I slept in the closet. So that's how I could afford to live.
Yikes.
On $600 a month. And yeah, I did that for a long time, actually. It worked out. I'm like, this isn't too bad.
Now we know why you didn't get married for a while.
That's probably it. That's probably
contributed.
True.
Okay, so now that you guys have a little bit of money, you have a little bit of team, like what do you do first? I mean, you have some people programming, assuming, they're starting to scrap together what we would today call some sort of MVP, right? But like, what next? What do you guys do?
The business plan was to build out accounting software that helped these properties manage every aspect. The move-ins, move-outs, We were going to build marketing websites so people could lease online, apply to live there online, get screened online, pay rent online.
Yeah.
So we were going to build out all these tools. And I think that the two easiest ones to build out were websites and an online payment system.
Yeah.
I don't know if the payment system was the easiest one to build. That was kind of early days of online
That
payment.
was pretty innovative back then.
It was super
There was
innovative.
no Stripes. There was no Plaid.
There was no regulation.
Right.
And so, I mean, I had people's routing and account numbers. I could log into their banks. I could have split to Mexico.
Yeah. Not PCI compliant.
There wasn't a PCI compliant. So, yeah, no, there was a MVP for the NFL that had just won the Super Bowl, and he was paying rent in one of his penthouses.
No way.
I don't want to mention his name, but I had his routing and account number, and he had a lot of money. You know,
Wow.
I could have split with that
For sure.
But yeah, when we did the business plan, we called through 1,000 apartment communities to find out if they had marketing websites, if they were collecting rent online, and nobody was. So those two tools were like, well, if we build these, we think people will buy them.
So were those calls initially just to sell them something, or do you think that maybe some of that early intention was to go find out what they needed? Or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was to find out what they had and what they didn't have.
Yeah.
And then we kept those notes. That was what my team at BYU Idaho did. Mm-hmm. We called through all those apartments and.
So did you stay up there? You were up there for a while in Idaho?
I moved down here.
Oh, you did? Okay.
As soon as I graduated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I just went around from apartment to apartment, letting them know that we were going to build them a website, and I had flip charts. I had served a mission for my church, so I had flip charts. I was familiar with that.
You were used to it.
I had pictures of what the website would look like with a bunch of different template examples.
Yep.
And then I just explained what the payment gateway would do and how they could collect rent online. And so it was vaporware that I went around selling, and got a few people to say, yeah, I'll pay for it. Some people paid up front for us to build them a website. And then we attached that payment system for a resident portal for them to log in and submit work orders as well, any maintenance requests. So there were some tools that automated a lot of their day-to-day practice. So there were some beneficial tools early on, but it took a while for those to be built. So I had to keep those clients hanging around for a little while, and that wasn't easy.
I've seen this like very interesting correlation in hosting this podcast, and then just in my friends and network that a lot of these companies that have now grown and been successful, or whatever you want to call them, that they're grown, they have revenue, customers, employees, and early on they were quick at getting to market. They were quick to sell to customers, and they did not spend a lot of time like building and then selling. They actually pre-sold, and like a high correlation of that. And so I think there's like this misconception around, I have to go build the perfect product, and then when we're ready to sell it, we can start selling it. And that's not at all what you guys did.
I've never experienced that in my career in any business.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always been get out an MVP, test the market. And yeah, I mean, I was selling websites, but I was telling them they'd have professional photography. That ended up being me with my digital camera, and I stitched the 360-degree tours together for them, and those stitches weren't super professional always, but I learned, and we just kept iterating and seeing what people would pay for, and really it was listening to the client, and they told us what to build next.
Exactly. That's exactly the key. Is like the worst thing you can do is build things on assumptions, right? Like once you get the feedback, then you know exactly what to build and what they want. And so if you build it on assumptions and then give it to them, you're already so behind, So it seems like that worked out pretty well. So what was your role in the company, at least at that time? Yeah,
I mean, I was just a co-founder. I didn't have a title.
You were just, put me in, coach. I'll do anything.
The photographer, the sales rep, the customer service rep. I mean, anybody that I sold, I'm like, you'll get a customer service rep, me. You'll get a professional photographer, me.
Totally.
So
it's so awesome.
Yeah, and it stayed that way for a long time until we hired up more people, and then then, just continued to try to figure things out.
So fast forward 5 years, right? Because roughly a few years later, you ended up getting married at some point. And so how old would you have been at this, like, you know, I guess before we flash forward, how old were you at this point when you guys launched the business?
I was
pretty young.
About 23.
Yeah, you were young.
Yeah.
For sure. So, okay. As you're trying to like figure your career out, figure your life out, this whole thing, like, what did you see and experience? Were you enjoying it? Or did it seem like inorganic for you, this experience of like starting a business from scratch and no instructions on what to do? You're just kind of like having at it every day.
Yeah, I
Like,
think
how did it
at
feel?
that age, I just think it was a blast. I mean, everything was a learning experience. We'd go
Yeah.
to trade shows and see what our competitors were doing, and we were so unprofessional. And you know, and then we stepped up our game the next time, and we
Yeah.
were really professional the next time, you know, or at
Yeah.
least tried to act that way. But I think these owners and operators of these huge apartments liked us because we were young and hungry, and we were building something of value. And so they saw something in us, and they saw that we were honest, you know, and we worked hard. So, and we had a ton of fun. Like, having fun, I think, is really what helped our brand. So at a lot of those trade shows, if there was a band or some music playing at these little, you know, little get-togethers after the conference,
Yeah.
we would be on the dance floor and having a ton of fun. And then everybody would join us.
Yeah.
And that just became our thing.
Yeah. So how did you guys continue to grow and finance it? Like, how did you get sales? And I mean, $100,000 at least initially wasn't a lot of money. I mean, how did you think about financing it?
Yeah, just every
in the
client.
first 5 years.
Yeah, every client that I sold a website to, they'd pay a few thousand up front, and then they'd pay a $99 a month fee, you know, and over time, some of these owners had 13 apartments, so they'd be paying $1,300 a month.
Wow.
And it, you know, that recurring revenue started to build up and allowed me to hire more service reps, you know, more sales reps, allowed us to eventually pay ourselves more than $600 a month,
Yeah.
you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah. And it just, you know, it was just a grind. There wasn't, you know, any overnight success ever. And we had plenty of big challenges that we thought, like, it's over. Like, man, we're going to get killed by our competition in this thing.
Yeah.
And we just kept going, and that didn't end up being the case, you
Yeah,
know? So yeah. And it was just a grind year after year. So
It happens. Like, some people will say, man, you know, being an entrepreneur is a roller coaster. Like, you know, you must feel crappy every other week. And I'm like, it's like every other hour. You know, like, it just, you know, every day is just, you have a million things you do every day, and it just kind of hits you.
yeah, yeah. And even when, you know, it's always a roller coaster.
Yeah.
No matter what. Yeah. The highs and the lows, like they come simultaneously at times too. Yeah. It could be hour by hour.
So, okay. Back to the fast forwarding to 5 years, you get married ish, somewhere in that range. Wouldn't that put you a little bit before, the housing crisis and crash in 2008?
Yeah. That was
So
right then.
Where was the business at that point? Let's say in your life event that you got married, roughly, like, how many people would you have had, and maybe revenue?
Yeah. And I don't remember revenue. I mean, maybe we were a couple million in revenue.
Sure.
But yeah, we were maybe 30 people. I had just hired out a sales team for the first time, and I was making, I think, $60,000 a year, which was amazing for me, more than my $600 a month.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
So I had just bought a little townhome by UVU, and that was going to be for me and my roommates, but I ended up getting married, and that was our first place that we moved into. And then the crash was just happening, and I had just moved my sales reps all over the nation, and I was also a sales rep. So the only way I really, you know, made money, that $60,000, was if I closed deals.
Yeah.
And so I moved out to Philadelphia at that time, and I tried to sell my townhome, and I undercut everybody by $10,000 just to hurry and sell it.
Yeah.
And that was I was lucky to do that.
So you did sell it.
Yeah. And everybody else sat on the market for a long time.
And how did it impact the business? I mean, being that, you know, there was landlords out there with rentals, did it impact you guys very much, or did you weather the storm okay?
Yeah. I mean, when people were losing their homes, they had to move into apartments. And so I don't even feel like we even felt a recession.
Wow.
Like, the company just kept growing. So in 2008, we had just landed, I think, two of the biggest companies in our space to roll out websites for their entire portfolios. And these companies were managing like 100,000 units of apartments.
Wow.
So they were just massive accounts. And then we collected rent for their entire portfolios as well. So once we landed those two, they're called the National Multi-Housing Council Top 50 companies. They were number 1 and number 2.
Yeah.
It was just a domino effect after that. So we we got in, we were building tools to automate, to save time. But yeah, for those owners, they couldn't just go and buy properties as easy as they had been.
Mm-hmm.
Interest rates were going up. Banks weren't lending as much.
Right.
So in terms of them growing their portfolios, that was a struggle. But in occupancy, I think everybody always, struggles with occupancy when people are out of jobs.
Sure.
They can't afford to even pay rent sometimes. And so collecting rent became a bigger challenge. But for us as a company, we just kept signing clients up through time.
Since you were bootstrapped for most of this, I mean, were there any points you were actually losing money, or were you guys pretty diligent about, maintaining at least some profitability just in case, or how did you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, again, it was mostly recurring revenue. So as that grew, and our clients were pretty good at paying.
Yeah.
But there were plenty of months where we had to ask a few key people like, hey, we're probably not going to be able to pay you on time. Can you wait?
Yeah.
So we had to go around asking a few people on occasion. And you don't have just these reserves of cash. I don't think we ever had reserves of cash.
Really?
We partnered with Zions Bank later on to help us process payments. And, we got a little money from them.
Yeah.
A little debt that we used to expand the business and grow.
Yeah.
But before that, it was just really bootstrapping.
Was that later when you guys were pretty big?
No, it was just, once we had landed those two massive companies, our revenue was growing. We hit, I think, 7 million in ARR, and then, we hit 15, then 25. So it kept climbing pretty quick.
Okay. So I remember a billboard in Lehigh somewhere, this was a few years ago, that said something to the tune of, we have the largest revenue in Utah, or the largest tech company with the greatest revenue of any tech company in Utah. Do you remember that?
I
think you might've been a homie, but like Entrata got really big.
Entrata got big. I don't know if we were ever the biggest in Utah in revenue. But it was
a
really
lot
big.
of revenue.
Yeah. I left in 2015. So I'd been there 12 years.
Yeah.
And when I left, we had just hit 100 million in recurring revenue, or we were on, we had the runway of
ARR.
Yep.
Yeah. That's hugely impressive still. Like that. I mean, that's up there with the best of the best in this area, at least, for sure.
Yeah. And it's just continued to grow from there.
So up until the time that you left, outside of like any debt financing, you guys pretty much bootstrapped it, right?
Yeah, we did entertain growth equity for a few years from a few different firms, and we got term sheets, but we just didn't move forward on them.
Why? Why do you think?
We were making a lot of money, and we were doing well. Like we didn't need to.
Yeah.
And I think that was the ultimate decision. I think it wasn't necessarily my call.
Yeah.
I saw some of those term sheets. I'm like, let's go, let's do this,
exactly.
And wanted to grow. And I thought we could grow a lot faster, and maybe we could have, maybe we wouldn't have. But I think it was the smart decision to not, even though I think I was against that. I was wanting to go.
You would have been down.
These VCs were whining and dining us, and I'm like, this is great.
For sure. It's a place of power for sure to be in when you've got revenue and you can make that decision. So, okay, so you end up leaving. You guys, I mean, how many employees would you say there was by the time you left?
Well, we had an Indian office with about 800 programmers.
Yes, that's
so
true.
We had about, I think, 600-ish, 700 here. So about 1,500 total, I think.
A huge team.
It was big.
Yeah. Why'd you leave?
I think, my co-founder and I just didn't see eye to eye.
Yeah.
Like it had been 12 years of battling, and it wasn't getting any better.
Yeah.
And it just made sense, and it was time. I'd done that for 12 years, and I thought this has been a great run. I've loved my time here, and kind of felt the pressure of like the universe on me, like it's time to go. And it was a quick decision. And I left on good terms. They threw me, I had 2 co-founders still there, Ben and Dave. They threw me a going away party.
That's cool. What were you in charge of at the time?
So I was co-president with Ben.
Oh.
And I was over sales, customer service. Those were really my 2 main focuses, HR.
Yep.
So we all the 3 of us divided up the business into kind of thirds.
Did you have any sort of idea on what you would do next?
Not a clue, and a ton of insecurity because that's all I had done.
Okay.
And I'm like, can I do this again?
Yeah.
And
you're from college. Like,
I wasn't recruited other than, my best friend and co-founder.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, like, what value can I add at the next company? What should I do? Do I join another business of similar size and continue to grow, or start over at a smaller business, or do something new? So I met with all these VCs here in Utah. I went and asked them about their portfolios, like, who would you join? Are there any companies you'd recommend? So I just, I put in a ton of work for about 3 months to really find out what I wanted to do next, and really had no clue.
Do you feel like, were you in a place personally where you could take a break and not rush to something? Or did you feel like, I got to do something, or it's going to hurt my family?
All my ownership was locked into my shares at Entrata. And so I had to get a job.
Yeah.
And so I felt pressure. So it's
funny
odd.
because you could be really rich on paper.
That's right.
and still need a paycheck. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it didn't make a ton of sense for me to go because I was making so much money.
Yeah.
We started paying ourselves really well.
Yeah.
And I had a ton of people that were working for me, and so I was kind of on cruise control. So and leaving something that was a rocket ship.
Yeah.
None of it made sense, but it all felt perfectly right.
Do you feel like in Dave's position, who was CEO at the time, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like he wanted you to go, or do you feel like he was a little bit remiss, or?
Yeah, no,
what do you think?
It was, we were best friends, and, just had challenges over the years. So I imagine it might've been mixed feelings for him. He might've been happy. But I know at times he was frustrated that I left.
Yeah.
I'd kind of become the face of the company, sales. I knew all the clients, but I agreed to stay on as a consultant for a year.
Okay.
So I still went to a few of the trade shows and saw everybody and said, hey, I'm still here. I'm not leaving on bad terms.
You're a shareholder still.
Yeah. Still have shares in Entrata. So that was, I tried to make it as good as possible for everybody. Cause all the people that I'd hired, a lot of them are still there, and they're some of the best people on earth. And now I'm competing a little bit with them, and I love talking trash to them, but they're they're good.
Hopefully you're okay with me asking, are you out of Entrata now, or you're out?
No, I'm completely out. Okay,
cool. Okay. So you're taking this break. 2015 you left, you said, right? Yeah. And how long until your next thing? And what was your next thing?
Well, what's crazy is that going away party that they threw, it was on the last day of January. And that afternoon, some random guy set up a meeting to meet with me and just pitch me on this idea called Homie. And, that was the first business that was pitched my way. And I had bought and sold homes before. I'd done for sale by owner, and I had so many realtor friends as well. Yeah. But I just didn't feel like the fee was ever worth it. And so he pitched me on the idea of automating it and making more affordable for consumers, and kind of, just disrupting the industry as a whole.
What was he pitching you on? Joining up with him?
Yeah. Co-founding this business. He's like, he had a few slides, put together that of how he thought the business could exist. And I loved the name Homie. All my friends were my homies.
I remember going to the office. I'm like, what's the Wi-Fi? This would have been in like 2017. And you go, it's Homie, don't play that.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and Homie for life.
Oh, yeah. All of them. They were great.
Yeah. No, we had so much fun.
Yeah.
We had so much fun. But yeah, because that was the first idea pitched, I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I got to look around. So I looked around for 3 months, and then I kept coming back, and this was Mike Peregrini. He was my co-founder, and he was really persistent.
He pitched you the idea.
Super persistent guy, yeah. And we had another co-founder that was wanting in on it, and then I had one of my old co-founders from Entrata, Mike Triunfo. He'd only been with us for our first 2 or 3 years at Entrata, but he was really talented, capable guy. And
Who was on the technical side?
that was him.
That was him.
That was him. He came in as our
I feel like I've met him
co-founding
before.
CTO. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's at Consensus now, doing really well.
Awesome. So, okay, he pitches you this idea and you're like, well, we got to do something. What's the next step?
You know, he had been a VC. He had worked at Mercado. So he's like, we got to raise money. And I knew nothing about raising money.
Ironically.
Yeah. I
you
mean,
just had a $100 million a year business going and you're like, hey, how do we do this?
well, I think that's partly why he wanted me on board. You know, he's like, hey, let's go pitch these VCs. And you already have a prop tech history. Let's go. So yeah, he and I worked on a pitch deck and we just went and hit Sand Hill Road and pitched all these VCs and, you know, Palo Alto, San Francisco, LA, New York. We went everywhere.
How did they treat you on the coast?
I mean, we got a term sheet on the first meeting that we met with this company, and it was a really good term sheet. But because we got a term sheet on the first meeting, we thought,
let's go get more.
Yeah. And so we
Mike,
passed.
like a true VC.
We passed on it, and it was the dumbest thing we could have done.
No,
it took us 6 months before we got another term sheet. But yeah, and we had to prove out the model. We had to sell a bunch of homes and show what we were doing and progress before we got anybody else to bite.
Yeah.
So, and I think that VC community is small. So when we passed on it, like, I don't know if he shared that around. Really good guy, really good. I mean, top 10 VC that gave us the term sheet. So it was dumb.
You paid tuition.
Yeah.
You paid very expensive tuition on that lesson. Yeah. So,
and I'm grateful. I don't have any hard feelings toward anybody except myself.
So okay, you don't have money now, right?
No.
Like the business is an idea still. And like, what do you do then? How do you get it off the ground? And I know you did eventually raise money, but you know, how'd you get to that point?
Yeah, we went to all the for sale by owners and we pitched them. We just said, hey, look, this is what we're planning on doing. Like, you actually can have an attorney help you. Somebody went to school for 7 years, not 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we said, you know, with a realtor, you don't know if you have somebody that's done 100, 200 transactions versus somebody who does one deal a year, which is the majority of agents.
Right.
And so,
yeah, I think the statistic is like one deal a year who's a friend or family, and then they quit.
Yeah.
Most of them.
So many get their license and just don't do anything.
Right.
But yeah, or you give your cousin, you know, a chance because they just got their license, and you don't know if you're going to lose 15, 20K just by going with somebody who has their professional license.
It's a super old school model. That's so for sure. It's so old school. So people probably thought you're crazy. And
yeah, well, I mean, almost everybody you talk to about buying and selling a home, if anybody's done it, and they've gone to the closing table and they pay $45,000 of fees for who knows what. Yeah. Like sometimes there's good work.
Totally.
You know, but if it's like, look, I found this home. I told my buddy to go show me this home. I negotiated it, and then I paid $45,000. Like, I heard that story a million times.
Yeah.
And so even these VCs, they were like, yeah, this is great. Of course, somebody needs to disrupt this, but why you? You know, how are you guys going to do it?
Yeah.
And so we had to get some traction and prove it. And then we partnered with KSL, and they had all these for sale by owners on their website. We had a great relationship with them, but this industry blacklisted KSL. And so, you know, that partnership ended up falling.
So you did. So you went and proved the model.
Yeah.
Then you go back, you raised money. How much did you raise that first time?
We raised $600,000 from Peak Ventures.
That's right.
And that was Sid and Jeff. They were awesome. And they were buddies of mine.
Prior to Album. I mean, technically they were Peak, right?
Yeah, it was Peak. Yep.
Jeff Danley and Birmingham, all those guys.
Yep. And I was playing hoops with them every morning, just telling them what I'm up to. But then eventually they were like, hey, and they had pitched me on a few of their other companies. They had introduced me to Podium. They'd introduced me to Outlet. Yep. Those two were just getting started, and I really liked both of them, but decided to do my own thing, and they backed us. And then we also had a company called Villar Ventures. They're a Peter Thiel fund.
Yeah.
And they put in money along with Jeff and Peak. So it was, you know, it was a great seed round. You know, I think we raised about $4 million on our seed. And
that was a big seed back then.
Yeah,
too.
and had a great valuation.
Yeah.
Like way too high of a valuation. And then, and we kept raising from there.
So, okay, at its largest, just for context for everybody, what was your head count of Homey at its greatest?
We had about 420-ish people.
That's a lot.
Around there. Yeah.
That's a lot. And you were in Utah. You went to Arizona, right?
Arizona, Idaho, Colorado, Nevada.
Wow.
Yep, 5 markets.
Wow. And what, like, as you start raising money, you start hiring employees, you start building product, right? And I know we're skimming through so much detail, but like, what was the biggest challenge that you were dealing with as you were proving this concept?
Fighting our own realtor association that we were members of. We paid about $100,000 a year here in Utah.
How? Like, if you're a realtor technically on record, right? Like, you know, why would they be fighting you so much? Like, what was it that pissed them off so much about what you were doing?
We were calling out the commissions. We were saying everybody was overpaid. And if you tell somebody they're overpaid, they're not going to like it. You know?
And ironically, what was it, last week or the week before? What happened? The lawsuit?
Oh, yeah.
Where they have to now disclose their fees?
Well, yeah, there's so much happening right now in the industry, which is really good for consumers. But yeah, they were just sued for steering people away from for sale by owner homes. Like realtors don't want to help you buy a home that's for sale by owner because they'll have to do the work for that person too.
Yep.
There is work to be done, and I get that.
Yep.
And that for sale by owner doesn't have an automatic built-in 3% commission to pay them.
Yep.
And so they're going to be like, you should buy this home right next to it. Because they don't say, but because they're going to pay me 3% commission automatically.
Do you know that? Yeah, I just remembered something like this impacted me. I think you had just launched Homey, so I didn't even know it was an option, but like my first home was for sale by owner, and I was totally cool doing it. Like, just, you know, I mean, I guess there's some inherent risk there, but like there's definitely people out there that will do it.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, that prefer it.
Yeah, that's why I joined Homey. I'd done that. I mean, it's a 6-page real estate purchase contract you can download online and just work through it. I'd done bigger contracts at Entrata with software deals, and I'm like, yeah, I can sell a home. Now,
tell me about, like, okay, so you're raising money. That probably makes you feel good. You're like, oh my gosh, everyone's validating that we're onto something, right? Yeah. You hire employees, they're excited. You get some customers, they're excited, and then bam, you get hit with a lawsuit. Like, from what I remember, they were pretty heavy, right?
Yeah.
The quantity.
Yeah, we were never hit with an official lawsuit. We had a lot of cease and desists. And
really?
That happened from day one. Everybody threw a cease and desist.
Like associations or individuals?
Our associations, different vendors in this space. I mean, it came from all angles. It came from our local government as well. The local government got thousands of complaints. The division of real estate, they got thousands of complaints that we were breaking the law. And so
what was the claim?
All sorts of claims that we were selling homes without being licensed. But we had lawyers and attorneys. And so we had the Utah Bar Association on our side. They're like, we're the ones that write those contracts. Like, yes, lawyers can transact without being a realtor. And there were laws that we could advertise homes online, like Zillow and KSL. They weren't licensed brokers.
Yeah.
So we got, $400,000 fines coming from the government, 6 months of jail time threats for me. And, I got a bunch of kids. My wife didn't want me in jail. I kind of wanted the street cred. I thought it'd be good for business.
Yeah.
But, it was hard. And our association that we ended up joining, and we ended up becoming a broker. We became licensed. All of our people got their realtor licenses.
Right. Do you feel like that was a major concession, or do you feel like it was like kind of a necessary, I don't want to call it a necessary evil, but like a necessary thing to at least participate and disrupt? Or do you, like, how did that feel when you're like, all right, let's have them get their license?
It was a necessary evil.
Yeah.
No question in my mind. I mean, the fact that we paid $100,000 a year, but they did trainings at their headquarters saying how to beat Homey while our new Homey agents were sitting in the audience.
No way.
They had to raise their hand, and we recorded it and turned it into the Tribune, and we were
no way.
They put up billboards. There were billboards and all sorts of stuff. A local association up north said, don't trust anybody that like offers a discount. And it's like, gosh, what does price have to matter in your industry?
Yeah.
So no,
they were scared to death.
They were scared to death. And so to me,
it was working.
It was working.
Yeah,
we became the largest real estate brokerage office in the entire state. And that's why we started expanding. We raised $90 million as a company.
Jeez.
Like we were doing really well.
You're kicking butt.
And
Yeah.
in spite of the backlash, but for sure the backlash slowed us down. I think we'd be doing so much better without that.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, you would know better than me, but like there is some of that call to attention that's to your benefit.
The publicity helped.
For sure.
Because we pushed it and said, hey, look, you know, our own association's doing trainings against us. And we turned that into the you know, local news, and we showed that, hey, we have these billboard wars going on, and they did a billboard wars story.
I love the billboards. They're awesome.
So like that stuff helped, but no, we had clients that quit all the time. Clients were like, hey, a realtor just came by and told me they will not show my house because I have a homie sign in front of my house.
That's the war you were waging. Like that was literally happening.
Yeah. We had another guy in St. George, and he's like, buyers came and knocked on my door. And they were like, hey, is your home still for sale? He's like, yeah, I listed it yesterday. And they're like, well, our realtor told us, you know, it was already sold.
Wow.
And he's like, well, that's because your realtor, I'm not willing to pay them a full 3% commission. He's like, I'll pay him $8,000, a flat fee of $8,000, but 3% was like, I don't know what it was, like around $20,000. And he's like, I just don't see it's worth that. So the buyers, like, our agent lied to us. And we were just seeing that nonstop. We got negative reviews that took us from I think a 4.7 out of 5 stars down to a 2.2 overnight. And so people would look at your reviews and be like, hey, I'm not going to use you.
Here's what's troubling as a CEO and founder. So you have sales, you have investors backing you. And in a lot of ways you could be like, we are kicking butt, like hardcore. This is awesome. And yet at the same time, you're just we're
getting our butts
humbled.
kicked. Yeah.
By other people at the same time.
This is the roller coaster.
Yes. Like how did you think about that? Was that like literally a shit show in your brain, or was it just, it
was hell. I had to go to counseling nonstop.
For sure.
Yeah. It was really hard. I mean, and having the local.
But you're doing so good.
Right? Yeah. Right. You're crushing it.
Yeah.
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 No, I was getting crushed. Yeah. So no, it's like any business. I mean, we had a lot of publicity, a ton of billboards. So everybody thought, yeah, like you guys are just doing so well. And in some aspects we were, but in a lot of aspects, it was uphill the whole time. It
is actually very similar to the Uber story and others, but like, I mean, them launching and getting started and going city to city, literally dealing with litigation and these associations of taxi drivers, it just over and over and over again. And you guys were, waging war against one of the oldest old school contracts.
The largest, most powerful lobby group in the United States of America. I mean, how many taxi drivers are cousins or friends or neighbors that you have? Do you have many taxi? No. How many realtor friends do you have?
So many.
So many.
It's so true.
That's who we were fighting. So there is a great comparison between us and Uber, but the difference is we were fighting everybody's mother-in-law, everybody's cousin. And it was hard because we all love our mother-in-laws, or we all love our cousins. We all love different family members. So like,
mostly.
Mother-in-laws have a bad rap. Okay. I love my mother-in-law, just for the record.
So okay, hold on though. So flash forward a little bit. You guys are rocking and rolling. Mostly doing good, but dealing with like a lot of crap also. Interest rates come up. Even before that, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, these companies came in and bought 25% of the homes in America for cash. I didn't know that.
And so the main buyer nationwide were millennials. They didn't have cash to buy homes. They all got loans, and loan, interest rates were nothing.
Yeah.
And so people started paying $50,000 over ask. No inspection, no appraisal. So in 2021, it went nuts. So
you were more affected, or the start of Homie even being affected was really when the prices started skyrocketing.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were doing hundreds of transactions a month and doing really well. And we were a mortgage broker. We were a title company. We were an insurance company. So we were a one-stop shop making money at every little piece of the transaction. And for the consumer, we still lowered it overall.
They saved a ton of money.
Saved everybody 10, 15 grand a pop.
Yeah.
But when that happened, our numbers flatlined.
Yeah.
our clients could not compete against cash offers.
Yep.
And so sellers were selling to these corporations nationwide. And so we had to launch a cash offer program. We were forced to do it. So we were already a mortgage company, but we had to become a delegated correspondent lender, and then we had to start buying these homes for cash with our own money, with our bank's money, but our name behind it, our butts on the line, and then letting our clients just get a mortgage through us. And then we would sell the home to them after we bought it for cash.
Yep. So and there are other brokerages doing that today.
Everybody had to adapt quickly.
Yeah.
But it was really hard with home prices then. Yep. Home prices got out of control. And so, the numbers started going down, just overall numbers. The market shrunk. Yeah. And then interest rates hit. Mm-hmm. So we were already struggling. Yeah. And then when interest rates hit, that was right when we were trying to raise our Series C. Yeah. And that just couldn't make it happen.
So you at some point left. How long has that been? Year and a half or something?
Yeah. It's been about a year and a half.
And Mike stayed to be CEO.
Yep. I talked to the board and just, I had done my 5th layoff. And when you do your first layoff, everyone's like, cut as deep as you can. We thought we did. Yeah. And of course, on the second one, we thought we did. Yeah. But these interest rates just kept killing us and everybody. Yeah. And so, at layoff number 5, and we had a great culture, but when you're not winning, it doesn't matter how good your culture is. Yeah. Like it was hard, and you're firing people that are loyal to the company. And so I told the board, I'm like, look, I'll work for free. I'll step away. Mike can be CEO. I'll just remain on the board. And so, that happened, a little over a year ago that I officially left.
Do you feel like, there was definitely logistics that went into that decision, but how much of that decision do you feel like was just, I need a break?
I don't, I think I needed a break a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I have 8 kids too,
totally.
So
and you got to go home and show up for them. That is so hard.
And be present through all the crazy,
it's so hard to have a crappy day. And then you're like, oh dude, I gotta.
How do you be present? Yeah. When everybody's after you, hating you, you got people like I was out of money at Homey since day one. Yeah. Like we kept raising money, but I didn't know how we were going to hit payroll like 2 months from then. Like we need to raise. And then finally something would happen. I'm like, we're not going to miss payroll. I don't need to do layoffs. But it was that way.
That happens for everybody.
Always.
No one knows it.
No one knows it.
It happens.
Yeah. There were so many times I walked through the door and I'm like, these people have no idea. They're like, how we're on this.
How close
we are always.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was, I for sure needed a break, but I don't think the right decision would have me just being taken like a sabbatical and then coming back as CEO. It was time. It was time for me to move on.
It wasn't a short while. You ran that for 6 years. 8 years. Okay. 8 years, right? So that wasn't short. What'd your wife think? How was she feeling as you're dealing with all this?
She has this vision. She knew I was going to leave Entrata a long time before I finally left. And same with Homey. She's like, you're not going to, and she would throw out little things like, you're not going to be there much longer. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she knew. And I think that was helpful because, we all attach our identities to our companies in a lot of ways. And so starting to
in so many ways,
right?
That was me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm sure I still have to work on that even now, but, when I left, I felt so much peace and I just felt like it was the right thing. And of course, not paying myself anymore, that probably felt the best because I had already fired so many people and those people weren't getting paid.
Totally.
So it's like, how do you keep paying yourself as CEO when you go through 5 layoffs?
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's super hard. It's definitely hard. But you're not alone in doing it, right? Like so many leaders have to go through the same thing and it's so rough.
We were one of the first in Utah, so I did feel completely alone.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But right now there's been tons of layoffs and a lot of people. So and after that I had a lot of people reach out to me in the community to be like, hey, I got to lay people off. Like, can you give me advice on what to do and what not to do? And I'm like, absolutely. I know a lot of what not to do's. And so, that became an expertise, which I never wanted it to be. But I was glad to be able to help others and give them a little validation and guide them through that decision. And even now, like I just read a report that 57% of startups are going to need cash here in the next few months.
It's true.
And so,
there's going to be more.
There's going to be more. And that's where, I anyone that listens, I am available. I want to help. Like I do have that experience and it is hard. So I can be a sounding board for anybody listening, but I was that for a little while. And I took off 8 months. I did have cash at that point. I had sold my Entrata stock. So, I had a cushion. We went on a trip as a family we didn't even know how long we were going to be gone. We just got in our van and left. And then,
I think you earned that trip.
Yeah.
You earned it for sure.
Yeah. We pulled the kids out of school and just drove around America, and that was awesome. And then, I just kind of hung out around the house and really, stayed busy, of course. My wife and I had a great time. It was also the greatest snow season ever last year. I couldn't have picked a better time to just.
And I was working a lot.
The slopes. I'm sorry.
We crossed over. Now I started another company, and now I'm really busy again. So I'm a little envious, but so now I know we've only got a minute or two left, but in joining Funnel, like how does that feel to go and just have a different perspective as a contributor on the team, as opposed to the guy, the person where the buck stops on everything?
Yeah, my CEO he worked for me in sales. I hired him to be one of my sales reps at Entrata, and he is an amazing CEO. I had no idea how good he would be, but he's really talented.
Awesome.
He's really capable, and he just closed on a $32 million round. Didn't involve me really at all.
Wow.
Did it and did a great job there, and raised it during this time. So
even more impressive.
Yeah, more impressive. So I really like it, and the work that I'm doing. I'm the chief revenue officer. I'm really over our sales team and just building that out. And it's something I know really well from Entrata. So having that 12 years of experience, and I never really wanted to leave Entrata in the industry. I mentioned, my partner and I just had a lot of differences. And so it's been a reunion.
Yeah.
It's been so fun to see so many people that I knew and loved. And so, it's just been great. I've really enjoyed it. Sales always has pressure, but it's not the same pressure that I had as CEO.
It's not payroll pressure.
It's not payroll pressure to a degree, but if I don't bring in sales, people aren't going to make anything. So there is, I do feel that responsibility. I'm traveling a lot more than I have in a long time, but I really enjoy what I do.
That's awesome. Well, I'm happy for you. Where can people reach you if they want to ask you a question or follow up on
LinkedIn? LinkedIn has been my go-to.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've enjoyed making new friends, new connections there. So if they reference this podcast in their first few words, that helps me sift through a lot of the spam that's out there, because I do miss stuff on occasion.
Yeah. But, one last question. What advice would you have for somebody who is just starting their own little startup?
I am such a fan of people that take risks and get out there. I'm such a cheerleader. So life, you have up and downs no matter what. If you work for Homey, you don't know if you're going to get paid the next month. I just told you, if you work for any company, whether you're venture backed or not, you at least have all visibility doing your own deal, doing your own job. So I say, just keep going, and I love the ambition. I think, there's opportunity to build a successful business no matter how many competitors you have. If you work hard and provide great service in a great product, even if it's, even if there's a lot of competitors out there,
you'll produce something.
You'll produce something and do well. Yeah. So I've always been encouraging of people starting businesses. The one thing is having to do layoffs and fire people. There's nothing worse than that.
Sucks.
Yeah. If you have a heart and you care about your people, getting fired, getting fired sucks, and wondering where am I going to get my paycheck for, next month? How am I going to pay my bills?
Right.
And to be responsible for that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, you can take that personal and
totally.
And yeah, that's hard. That's the worst part of starting a business, is the potential of that.
Yeah. And the truth is that many, even successful startups, might have to do that at some point.
Yeah. There's reduction in forces all over the place.
It
like
sucks.
however you want to label it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it sucks no matter what.
For sure.
Yeah. And so that's part of the business, and you can't control that.
Yeah.
No matter what. Like, I've heard some people say, well, you should have had reserves backed up. And it's like,
to what extent?
Yeah. You don't know how to run a business. Like, what do you mean? Like,
yeah.
we're trying to make it.
Yeah.
You think we're just sitting on piles and oodles of cash, or, like some CEOs pay themselves a ton, but like,
yeah.
I didn't make hardly anything at Humi over those last 8 years. And as an employee now, I'm finally making a paycheck.
Yeah. You're like, this is great.
It's great. But anyhow, yeah, I think just keep going is my advice.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to today's episode of No Instructions. Feel free to leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe so we can continue producing these podcasts. Today's episode was brought to you by Distro. Distro is a platform to help startups find, hire, and pay employees in over 200 countries. It's free to use. Go to distro.io to set up your free account today.